Hello and welcome back. My name is Hannah.
And I'm Rachel.
And this is the You Talking to Me podcast. Today we are discussing the movie Carol. I will give a quick recap before we jump into the movie. Carol is about two women, Therese Bellevitte and Carol Aird, and their love story during the 1950s in Manhattan. When Therese is working in a department store, Carol comes in to buy her daughter, Rindy, a Christmas present. Therese notices Carol immediately and becomes very interested in her. Therese helps Carol pick out a train set for Rindy. Carol leaves her gloves at the store, and Therese brings them home to mail them back to Carol. To thank her, Carol takes Therese out to lunch. After having lunch, they begin to have a strong friendship form, which then turns to them both having feelings for each other. Therese goes away with Carol over the holidays on a road trip, which is where they begin to fall harder for each other and eventually end up together. The morning after they sleep together, they find out that a man was spying on them and sent a tape of them to Carol's soon-to-be ex-husband, Harge, so he can gain custody of Rindy in the divorce. Carol leaves Therese where they were and has her best friend Abby come to drive Therese home. Carol leaves a letter for Therese telling her that they can't be together now, but maybe in the future. Carol tries to do therapy to please Harge and to be able to have joint custody of Rindy, but after some time, Carol decides that living as anyone other than her true self isn't worth it. Carol tells Harge he can have custody of their daughter as long as she can visit. Carol then sends a letter to Therese to invite her to have tea. While having tea, their conversation is interrupted. At the very end of the movie, Therese finds Carol, and when they see each other, they know that they will spend their lives together.
All right. So that was a very long recap, but this is kind of like our first independent film type. I mean, Three Generations was kind of an independent film, but it was a lot more straightforward, I feel like. And so this one it's a lot more complicated because it's more character work rather than like plot driven and story driven. Like the characters and their actions make up the story rather than like big events happening to them.
Yeah, we needed to kind of include all that to keep it straight of what was happening, because I can't, so it's a 2-hour movie, but it feels longer in a sense just because of how many things happen in the movie. But when I watch it, it doesn't feel that long at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with that just because it's engaging because the characters are so strong that we're driven to want to know what they're thinking next, what they're going to do next, things like that. Whereas if you're watching a movie and the plot and the action is not interesting you enough, hopefully there's good enough characters behind all that to keep you invested. But when you're watching a movie like this, the writers and directors have spent so much time working on the characters that it almost doesn't matter what they're doing because you are so drawn to the people, which people are drawn to people. So movies like this, while you can't watch them all the time because they do usually focus on dark subjects, independent films like this, they are usually, I would say, just of like a better quality in the character aspect. I don't know what you think, Hannah.
Well, I thought they definitely had in-depth storylines for the characters. It wasn't like you just have someone come in and then they leave and then you never learn anything else about them, or it's like a main character who you're like, okay, but what's like their life story? Like, why are they acting this way? I feel like you get a lot of those answers from this film for the main characters. So I like that. And I just like also that it's set not at current time. I get that that's not exactly what we were just talking about, but that made me think of that.
So this is one of your favorite movies, Hannah?
Yeah, I like this movie, and I think part of the reason why is because it's set in the 1950s in Manhattan.
Hannah's a very I need an out of current world experience type of person when they watch movies. So it's like, I don't know if you've listened to our most previous, not most previous, but like our previous podcasts where if it takes place anywhere outside of North Dakota, basically, Hannah's all on board. Like, this is my favorite movie. Oh, wait, actually, it kind of sucked. It just took place in Italy. That's why I liked it. So, the fact that you said that is not a shock, that that's one of the reasons you love this film.
Yeah, like I actually remember, for example, I liked this show. I can't think of what show it was, but I really loved it until they started talking about Instagram and Facebook. And then I was like, no, we're done with this. I don't like it. Let's not bring the current reality into the show. I mean, there's a time and place for that, but a lot of times I'm like, if I'm watching something, it's to escape my reality. It's not to like be brought into that reality in a different way. I don't get, or I mean, I don't know if that just got across the point that I was trying to get across, but did that make sense?
Absolutely. It's an escape for you from what you're going through currently. And honestly, with all of the social media and stuff, that can be an escape for some people, but for others it just like compounds what you're going through more. So I like that this took place in the past because it transports us to a time that we've never lived in. Hannah and I definitely have not lived in the 50s, and so it is, while it wasn't a better time for people, it is just a fun little trip to the past that we would never experience without films, even if it wasn't a very fun storyline at times.
Right. And I'm not saying I want to go live in the 50s because I think that if I lived in the 50s, I would get in a lot of trouble. And like, I'd be like, I'm not wearing dresses and I don't want to be married to a man and I don't want to live the life that you're saying I should be living. And like, I don't, yeah, there'd be a lot of things that would just get me in trouble, I'm sure. But I think that just the fact of seeing that time, I like seeing the way the people dressed and like how the phones were and how maybe people had better manners back then too, almost. People are kind of rude now, but people are also more willing to be blunt and be honest, I think, whereas maybe back then, and obviously I'm reading into this because I never lived then, but maybe people were more closed off because they didn't want to say something that would hurt someone else's feelings. I don't know.
So, what number time is this for you watching this film?
4, 5, 6, something like that.
Do
I
you
don't know how many
remember the
times.
first time you watched it, what you were feeling and thinking when it was on your screen?
Yeah, I remember that I couldn't like even believe that it was a movie. It was in 2015. So that was recently, it maybe came out before gay marriage became legal. I don't know if it came out before or after. Um,
If you watched it in 2015, that would be before gay marriage
before.
was legal.
So to me, it was like astonishing that there was a movie like this that was made in America. I had seen a foreign film that was two women loving each other storyline, but I had never seen anything that was made in America. Um, and so yeah, it was like surprising, astonishing. I like fell in love with the movie because of that. And I don't know if there was like a bunch of women loving women movies that I would choose this as the top, but maybe because it was like really the first one I saw and because it's really one of the only ones like it that's why I like it so much.
No, I get that. I thought it was a very good movie watching it for the, because this was my first time. It had been on like a list of mine to watch for a while, but I just had never gotten around to it, probably because it was long. That literally is sometimes the only factor that deters me from watching a movie at times, which I don't understand because I'll watch like 6 episodes of a TV show, but that's different for some reason. But this film had me like all over the place emotionally because I was like, I don't know, on edge, like not knowing when they were going to get caught, because I just felt like it's a film, it's not, and it's the 1950s, it's not going to work out perfectly for them. So you're just on edge the whole time being like, when is the shoe gonna drop? When is this bad thing gonna happen? Because this can't just be the like nice little perfect cross country road trip that they are expecting. So I remember, like I said, just being on edge a lot of the time while they were driving, but also being like, my heart, it's so full, or like really sad. Like it was, the emotions were great.
Yeah, it does take you on an emotional roller coaster. And I'm trying to think back to the first time I watched it. Like, I did not foresee this man spying on them. Like, I did not see that coming at all. And I was pissed. And the however many times I've watched it, I was just as pissed this time when I watched it. Because I think that's so, ugh, it's like skeezy. I hate it. I hate it. It's like, you could cross her in a different way, but that way is terrible. And I don't want someone to cross them, obviously, but I think that they probably had to make that as a choice because it is like so appalling and it makes the audience mad.
I literally like you, I was disgusted. It's just like you are invading such a privacy that they thought that they had. So what happens, for the people who didn't watch the movie, because we're going to spoil it, I mean, that's what we're here for, is Therese and Carol are in a hotel room and they have sex for the first time, right? That's when it happens.
Yeah, it was on New Year's Eve.
Romantic. And then they find out, I don't remember how, they find out that the guy next door was like recording it through the wall, which is like the grossest thing. It's like you had to have been, and he was like stalking these two women. And it was a good twist that it was the guy that they met a couple hotels ago, right? Like a day or so ago. It was this like newspaper or magazine seller. And they just like chatted with him at breakfast one day. And then you find out that he's the one that was like trying to catch them basically in an act that was undeniably, terrible in quotations, so that they had proof that Carol was not fit to be the mother of Rindy. And I was just like, I don't know how, but do something else. I'm with you, Hannah. That was, it just crossed so many lines. It'd be like somebody like recording through your window. I don't know, like setting up a phone, like a secret cam in your room. It's just like, absolutely. How is that legal?
Yeah, please tell me how that's legal, because I don't think it could be. Maybe it was something that was legal in the 1950s. I have no clue because, like we've already said, we were not alive during that time. But yeah, it would be like someone setting up a camera in your bath or like in your shower or in your bedroom. It's just like it crosses the line. It's terrible. I don't like it. Really makes my skin crawl. And then when they find out, like he was so nonchalant about it too. I can't remember his name, but he was just like, "It's done. I already gave it to Harge. Like, hmm, it's whatever." And Carol's like about to shoot him with this gun, and Trez throws the gun away. And then yeah, they go to a hotel room. I can't remember if it's like immediately they go to a different hotel, what, but Therese is gonna sleep in the opposite bed because they get a room that has two twin beds. And Carol is like, no, like you can still sleep over here with me. And so they did, but then when she wakes up, Abby's sitting in a chair, like waiting for her, and Carol's gone because Carol had to go back.
It truly is like a heartbreaking film at times, because it's like you, it's also such a slow burn, because it's over halfway through the film that they like actually sleep together for the first time. And it's like honestly about halfway through that they kissed for the first time too. It was very long. And so it definitely made it so that you knew that wasn't the one scene that they were like, I can't wait to record the, lesbian sex scene. It wasn't that. That was just the natural progression of this relationship for them. It wasn't just like some horny director, you know what I mean, like writing and directing this film. It was truly like just passionate in the way that this relationship was supposed to go. But it's heartbreaking because she leaves her, and they, like, the calls that Therese tries to call Carol, and you can just like hear them breathing on the line, and just like the way her voice catches at times. I'm like, don't do this to me. Like, why are we here? Stop. Just go be with each other. But it's really also an act or a testament to Carol's personality, to who she is, because while she does love Therese, she also like loves Rindy, her daughter, so much, and she's like willing to put her daughter before herself in a lot of this film, because that is like her one love in her life is her kid, and she takes like such good care of her. She's such a good mother in the scenes with them. And it just like hurts to know that like Harge is trying to take that away from her. Like on Christmas, when he like just shows up and is like, I'm taking Rindy with me. And I'm like, absolutely not. No, you're not. And like he tries to take Carol too, but they're like basically in the middle of a divorce at this point, aren't they? Like getting divorced kind of by Christmas already. And
Yeah.
so
He doesn't want the divorce, though. She does. And some backstory, too, is that Carol's already been caught in the act of lesbianism with Abby before. And Abby's still her best friend. And Abby's Rindy's godmother. And they're not together anymore, but it did happen. And now they know that they like women. And they like talk about liking women and who they're going to pursue, whatever sort of thing. And then also when you're talking about the heartache and with Therese, like her breath catching or like crying, trying to call Carol. The other thing I like is when Abby's driving her back to New York or Manhattan, um, she actually has to get out of the car and she throws up. Like it just shows like how wrecked she is from this. And she's like trying to do her best to stay together, but it just shows how emotions can wreak havoc on you.
well, and we don't see those emotions at all when she's with whatever boy that she's with at the beginning of the film. Tom? Richard? I'm trying to look at my notes because I really don't know his name.
I don't know. Like Richard
Hold on.
doesn't sound off. We could go with Richard. It could be wrong.
Yeah, I wrote the fact that Therese would go with Carol and not Richard tells a lot. Okay, so there's the scene where Richard is trying to get, so Richard is her kind of boyfriend, right? But she also
I
like
would
kissed
say more
another.
than that because he's like, you can come to my family Christmas. Like, I want to marry
Yeah.
you. I love you. And I swear I could be just making that part up, but I think he says I love you. And she was just like, thank you
Yeah,
or
yeah, no, that's
something.
true. But he's like trying to get her to go to like Spain or Europe or somewhere with him. And she's like, no, like just keeps like pushing it off, like doesn't really ever want to talk about it, and comes up with whatever excuses. But then Carol's like, do you want to drive to what, like Chicago with me or something? They go somewhere like that, I feel like. But she's like, do you want to go on a road trip with me somewhere else? And
Or
she's
I
like,
think she just says out west or
okay.
something. Maybe it's east, but I would find it hard to imagine you're going east from New York. I mean, maybe they
No.
did, but
I think
it
they
was a direction.
I think they go west for sure. But she's like, okay, sure. Even though she's like known this woman for like 3 days at max, and probably not even that long. And so something that I kind of was realizing just while we were talking about it right now. So anyway, she has like no emotions with Richard, like none. She just like doesn't give a crap about this guy. But I think she's in denial, I'm pretty sure, probably obviously, at the beginning of this film that she's like not into men. But she, I think, just is trying to convince herself that she's not into Richard because she like cheats on him with that guy at the newspaper.
Well, I don't know if it's cheating because
But
I
she
swear
like,
she tells Richard that she's going to meet him. And like Richard's mind place is like, oh, like we're like really together, we're gonna get married. And I think hers is like, oh, we're casually dating.
yeah.
I could be wrong,
But
but that's what I was thinking.
I think she's trying to like convince herself that it must just be Richard that she's not into though. And so she finds like another guy that fits her more perfectly in terms of like profession kind of because she's a photographer and he a writer for the newspaper or is he also a photographer?
I'm pretty positive he was the writer, but he knows about photography, or he said he had a friend or something. But
Yeah,
yes, it's
because
at the newspaper.
he's trying to get her a job kind of at this newspaper, I feel like. And so he's like giving her tips on stuff and they're like working late and like painting someone's apartment, maybe hers. They're painting an apartment. And they like kiss, but she stops it, I'm pretty sure. And he doesn't push it further than that. Like he's like actually whenever you watch 1950s films, they like old-timey films, they make you think that all men are pigs and the worst and like don't respect women, but it was really nice that like they showed this like yeah, he wanted to kiss her and wanted to go further with her, but like he didn't. Like he kind of was like wanted to, but yeah, they just stopped it and he didn't push it again like in later scenes either. I remember.
When they're painting the apartment, that's later, but the kiss happens when they're at the newspaper. It's the first time she's going to meet him. And he's like showing her stuff, and then he gives her beer, which why'd you have beer at the workplace? I don't, okay. And then they're having beer, and then he kisses her, and she's like, I need to go. And he's just like, no, stay. And then she leaves.
Oh yeah, and then I wrote New York Times guy because I don't know his name is very nice and he recognizes that he made a mistake. You know, like he knows that he's wrong is what and he doesn't continue to push it. And he doesn't seem weird about her and Carol like wanting to go off. Either
Yeah,
he just doesn't care or he is like one of the people back then that was like, okay, like love is love, basically. Like rather have you be happy.
right. Like Richard, for example, when Therese says she's gonna go with Carol, he's like, oh, you have this big schoolgirl crush on her. Like, you're gonna be back here in 2 weeks and your heart's gonna be broken. Like, he knows that she likes her too. And then Richard, though, once they do have that falling out because of the man spying, he's helping Therese paint her apartment. And he's like seeing these pictures of Carol, and he's like, oh, like that's who you went away with, right? And he was just very like curious, but not like assuming what happened. And he didn't seem like he had any issues with what had happened.
Stan. Like not like hardcore, like light Stan. He's a good guy. What were some like weird were there any like weird things that happened in this film that you were like, would that really happen? Or anything that just stood out as like, oh yeah, this is definitely in the 1950s and not today.
Um, well, the fact that she invites her to go to tea at the end, I can't say that a lot of people, I mean, there's obviously some people, and in some areas of the world, I'm sure that that's normal, but where I live, if someone invited me out to tea, I'd be like, okay, where? What are we going to a Starbucks? Because that's like where you're gonna have tea.
Yeah, I wonder if it was like their equivalent to like, do you want to go grab a drink? Do you want to go get coffee? Type of thing. One of the things that stood out to me, I don't remember what the restaurant was, but it was when Carol invites Therese out to lunch to like thank her for the gloves, and Carol's like smoking inside the restaurant. And I'm like, whoo, that was like, it's such a weird thing to see now because almost our entire lives, you couldn't smoke. Well, at least like a lot of our lives of like us having conscious memory was that you can't smoke inside buildings. And North Dakota is like extremely strict about where you can smoke. And I just remember in like 2016 even going on a road trip, and we stopped in Missouri, and we stopped at this Denny's that was inside of a like truck stop basically, and there was smoking sections still that like were in use that you could do. You could smoke in there. And I was like, as far away from that section, please, as possible.
Yeah, it's weird. I remember going to Vegas and being in my hotel that had smoking. Like you go down to the casino area and I was like, my lungs are black. Um, Especially because we're not used to having that around all the time. And then other people just think it's so normal. And I'm like, no, I like literally can't breathe. I have asthma. Thank you. I remember before we had talked about some of this. Well, if you guys don't remember, our old footage got deleted by accident. So I remember we talked about this scene. Um, After Harge comes to get Rindy on Christmas Eve, and then Carol's obviously upset, but Therese is still there, and then which honestly, that's awkward. Like the fact that Therese is there, right? And this whole thing's happening, and Harge is like trying to fix a sink leak. And I don't know. There was a lot of things happening in this scene, and I was like, why is Therese just here, like all casual? Um, and then Therese goes home on the train and she's crying, and you did not like that crying scene. I remember that.
Yeah, okay. So my thing is also it's I didn't realize it, I guess, that this is somewhat true for me, but it's like a trope is if they're crying on the screen, they're not crying in the audience, basically. So it's like you have to get them almost to that point to make us as the audience like feel it. It just felt so weird to me to like watch her cry in the train. I don't know if it just didn't feel like she should be crying, or if it was just the fact that she was crying and not almost crying, because when they're talking on the phone and you can tell that like it's painful for them to talk to each other on the phone but like not be able to talk to each other on the phone, that got me way more emotional. Plus there's just so much more history already at that point in the film. Obviously it's near the end, but I did not like the crying scene, and I think it just seemed forced.
I didn't think her acting seemed forced, but thinking about it, it does seem odd because this was the first time. So they being Carol and Therese, they obviously met at the department store. Then they met at the restaurant when Carol takes out Therese for sending back the gloves. Now Therese is at Carol's for the first time. And it's the first time she's there. And I don't know if Therese, though, is crying because of like Carol telling her to leave, or if it's the fact that Harge is doing that and she's just thinking of Rindy and Carol and how that must feel to have this man like coming in and being like, I'm getting my daughter. So I don't know, but I also felt like it wasn't quite earned. I didn't think her acting was bad. I just felt like it was a little too soon.
Yeah, I felt like the fact that she like had to cry in that scene was forced upon her. It just feel it just felt like a weird place to have it. So there are a lot of storylines in this, as you heard in the recap, and if you watched it, you know that there's like an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K story. Like there are so many different plot lines just connecting everyone. Um, but one that I understand it and it makes sense, but the thing that didn't do much for me was the photography storyline with Therese. I just didn't get a lot out of it. The main things was like didn't so does she get a job at the end because of her
Yeah, she
photography?
works at the
I can't
newspaper,
remember.
but I don't know if it's for photography or for writing.
Okay. Because I mean, I honestly think you could pluck out all of the photography bits and the movie would still be the movie. Because you don't, I don't think you need, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you need that New York Times guy, because if you took out the photography storyline, he might disappear. And he hasn't left that big of an impression on me for me to think that he needs to be in this film.
I would disagree because he's the one who's more supportive of what happened. And then, uh, I mean, it wouldn't have to be necessary, but I feel like there'd be a part missing. And then it's like he's talking about the pictures that Therese has taken of Carol, and he's the one who encouraged her to take pictures of people instead of objects. And so that, like, Carol was her muse. And so then he sees all these pictures he's taken of her, and he can tell that, just by the way you shoot someone, how you feel about them. And I feel like that was important because then it's like it gave her time to talk about it. But I mean, I also see where you're coming from, and it could be taken out, but I also truly feel like there'd be a different element that would have to be added in then.
Yeah, I think there's always, which is funny to me, especially in more indie films, and I've noticed it in a lot of like LGBT films, is that they're into something really artistic. And I don't know if that's just because that's the only way that they feel that they can express themselves because the world doesn't want to listen to them. I don't know. But in Three Generations, Elle Fanning's character, Ray, was like making videos and music and things like that. And in Carol, Therese was into photography. It felt that specific, just the photography just felt weird. And I don't know, like, what was it doing for Carol? Like, that had to have affected her because they wouldn't include it in the film if it didn't affect other people and not just Therese.
Well, Carol was the subject of these pictures.
Right, but like,
Um,
what was she getting out of it, like, for herself? Like being desired, but she already is kind of desired by people.
yeah, she has some sort of force about her that it's like she's this elusive sort of person almost, I guess. And yeah, there's something about her, and I don't know if that came across to you too, or just me being me, but it's like you want to know who Carol is and what her life story is and why she is the way that she is. And I'm pretty sure they have it written that way. They want you to be intrigued by this person. And the person who plays Carol is Kate Blanchett, and she does a wonderful job. I mean, I just think it's really, really good.
Well, her character is iconic because even before I had watched this film, okay, I followed the Try Guys on YouTube, and they did this video. The Try Guys try playing D&D. Okay, so Dungeons and Dragons, where you can create your own character. You can be a troll, you can be a wizard, you can be like all these different things, but you can also be a human. Okay, so one of them is like this really strong, like mountain troll. One of them like does magic and can do spells. The guy named Eugene, so he is gay, and he said that he wanted to be the number one like gay icon for the gay community, and he created a character that was literally just Carol from the movie Carol. And so it wasn't just watching them play the game either. They like dressed up as their characters, and he looked good. Like, it was crazy. Like, I had only seen the cover, so I knew like what she looked like. But then now, like, imagining it, I'm like, Kate Blanchett, is that you, Carol? Like, in the video. It was just so funny to watch him like just wanted to be Carol in D&D. So she is iconic throughout many generations and many people across the world. So
Yeah, she has a force about her. And the actress who plays Therese is, I can't remember if this is her first, I think her first name is Rooney. I'm pretty positive I think it's Rooney Mara, if I'm remembering correctly. I remember reading an article though, or an interview with the director, and he said something about how she is really good at reacting versus like acting. It's like a lot of times she's not even speaking. There's a lot of silent parts, but the way she acts with her body or reacts with her body and her face gets the point across, which I genuinely don't see a lot of people uh reacting the way she does in films. Like I feel like there's a lot of people who are good at acting, but if they had to do parts in a movie where they're not using their voice as a tool, they're not going to get the point across like she does.
Oh yeah, I thought she was fantastic because she was very quiet the whole time. I mean, the scene where she's just sitting there kind of like just being in the room while Hard shows up at Christmas. I mean, you're right, she's just like awkwardly there. I'm sure if we like counted the amount of lines she had, it'd be way less than a bunch of the other characters. So I thought she was fantastic. But I thought all of the actors were really good because I couldn't really tell that any of them were acting, honestly.
Except for that crying scene.
Yeah. She did fine though. Like I just honestly mad at the writer or director, whoever like put that in there.
And I like the fact that Abby is part of the storyline and the fact that she has to go get Therese. That's like maybe a part that didn't feel realistic to me because I feel like if you were in a relationship with someone and then you had to leave, would your best friend really go drive them back across the country? Like, I don't know. That's one part of a storyline that, like, if I was the friend, would I go do that? I don't think so. Probably
But it
not.
but it like wasn't for Therese. It was like for Carol to go and try and like save her family basically and like save Rindy, which is her goddaughter. So I wonder if that aspect of it is like motivating this. And also she was pretty annoyed that she had to do this. Abby was just like not pleased to be with Carol's new hookup, but she knew it was something more at the time. But she was just like because she's a lot younger than Carol is. Like we haven't talked about that. Trez is probably like 20 years younger than her, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
And
probably.
which Carol looks great. Like honestly, you only know that she's older because she seems just like larger than Therese is. Not because she's like weighs more or anything. She just seems like she's just like a larger person. And maybe it's just the personality that like flows through the room when she walks in. She just the maturity is way higher and she's just sure of herself in these relationships, I think also helps really hone in the age difference because Kate Blanchett looks great. Like she does not look old. Honestly, I have no idea how old she's supposed to be in this film, but she looks older than Therese without looking old. And that's just magic. She's a magical human.
Truly. Plus, Harge looks older, like,
Yeah.
so that's a good assumption. If
She
not
can't
20, I would say at least 10, 12, 15 years.
she has to be in her 40s, I feel like, though, because she has like a 4-year-old daughter that she gave birth to. And in the 50s, it's not super easy to get pregnant after like 40. So I wonder if she is 40 and maybe Therese is like 25. So like a 15 age difference or something.
Yeah, I could see that. It's very good. Oh, something that's kind of a fun fact about this movie, it's that it's based on a book by Patricia Highsmith, and the book is called The Price of Salt. Oh, wait. The Price of Salt by Claire Morgan. I don't know why I have Patricia Highsmith on here. Oh, because it's her pen name. So sorry, I was just confused there. Yeah, Claire Morgan, who is Patricia Highsmith, and she says that it's based on her life. Like it isn't her life story, but it's based off of her life, and then Carol was adapted from the book.
That's cool because I mean, that makes sense then too that it's so honest feelings, so character heavy is it's based off of like real people, which make the best characters. So
Well, another fun fact to go with that is that it was directed by a man, though, which is very interesting. It was directed by Todd Haynes, but he says it's for all the lesbians in his life.
he is gay though. we looked this up last time because we were like, that's a little weird to say if you're not gay, but he is gay, so I'll let it slide. You're allowed to say it's for all the lesbians in your life without it being weird.
Yeah, you come from the gay experience, so that is interesting. Did you like that this movie starts at the end of the storyline and then comes back to it, or do you not like when films do that?
I don't mind when films do that. I don't think this benefited from it. It didn't keep me like, ooh, I wonder what happens to make them do that. Because it's a little, she like gets interrupted to like go to a party and like their conversation is cut short. But we find out more of like what happens at the end or whatever. And we find out that they see each other there. Like they don't separate and never see each other again. Like Therese follows her, right? It's Therese following Carol. So, I mean, that's great, but I don't think we needed it because I would have been invested if we had started at like the first scene after that. What about you?
Well, I like that it starts at the end and then comes back to the beginning, but I also would agree that it wouldn't be necessary. I just like that it like shows you like, oh, this is what it's going to be, but we're not giving you all the pieces, because what does happen at the end then is Therese leaves and goes to a party, but then she's at this party and she realizes she doesn't want to be there around all these people, and I'm pretty sure Richard was there dancing and like making out with some girl, and she's like, yeah, like I'm just not interested in that life. It almost seemed like there was another girl who was trying to hit on Therese at this party, and maybe I was just reading into the situation. um but then she goes to the restaurant where Carol is, and she's like walking in and the guy's like, oh, do you have a reservation? And she just like blows by him and she sees Carol, and Carol just like looks up and their eyes meet, and it's like, that's the end.
Yeah, that's the end. And Hannah's like, and they know that they are meant to be together forever. No, what happens? I need to know. I literally wrote, what happens in my notebook when it finished. I go, no, this is not the end. I didn't wait 2 hours for this. I was mad.
But I think that you just know.
I got heated. I know, but you
You just
think you
know.
know, but you didn't think you knew that the tapes were coming and that they were gonna do all that stuff. So you just don't know, Hannah. You don't know.
Okay, fair. You don't literally know, but you just know. My assumption is that they spend their lives together. That's what I want to believe.
You can only hope. So yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Hannah?
The only other thing that's a fact that I found out was, if you're interested, it was filmed in Cincinnati, Ohio, because apparently Cincinnati, Ohio looks like Manhattan in the 1950s.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I would have
But
never picked Cincinnati to be my New York City.
no, but honestly, I like believed it. Like, I don't know what 1950s Manhattan looked like, but I didn't for 1 second think, oh, this is false. So I guess maybe it does look like that, but also we weren't alive during that time. So how could we possibly know? But other than that, I think that that is all that I have to say. Do you have anything else you want to say about it?
No, that's it. So I think I will just run through our social media and whatnot as we wrap up. So if you want to email us, you can give us suggestions, you can give us critiques, whatever, at youtalkingtomepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on the Instagram at youtalkingtome.podcast. You can follow us also on Twitter at youtalkingtome11 because we're both number one. And go watch us on YouTube. Like we've been saying, we are on video now. People, don't make it a waste of my time to make these videos. No, I'm just kidding. But like and subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell so that you know whenever we're coming out with a video. And leave us reviews. Share this with your friends. Let them know what we're doing. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, with that, my name is Hannah.
And I'm Rachel.
And this is the You Talking to Me podcast. Bye.
Bye. Quick sneak peek. Next month is originals versus remakes. Woo! Hopefully you stay to the end. Bye!